Donald Jeffries. Author of Hidden History and Survival of the Richest. Host of The Donald Jeffries Show. Billy Ray Valentine. Host of the Infinite Fringe podcast. Researcher, truth seeker from the Bronx, New York. Tony Arterburn. Radio host, combat veteran, precious metals analyst, and alt historian. Together, they take on the headlines of the week, decode the disinformation, and plow through the mainstream propaganda. Unauthorized, unscripted, and unintimidated. This is America Unplugged.
All right, unauthorized, unscripted, unafraid, unjabbed. Unreal sometimes.
I was going to say unreal.
Unreal sometimes. So we have the legendary Don Jeffries here with us, ladies and gentlemen. As always, this is America Unplugged. Billy Ray Valentine is absent today. He had to get out of the house. He got a bonus at work, and he's going to buy as many of the new Trump sneakers as possible. He's going to hoard them. He's going to vacuum seal them, preserve them for all time, and we wish him well on his journey. Hopefully he'll be back next week to tell us the tale. I want to talk about that a little bit, Don, as we open up. I was talking to Billy off air, and unfortunately he couldn't make it, and he said, cover the Trump sneakers. And to be honest, I've been in Mexico speaking in Anarchapulco, and I saw the blurbs and the headlines, and honestly, anything that has Trump on it now, it hits my ocular vision, and it just immediately bounces back. I don't cover it as well as I used to, but I looked into it, and so it's $300 a shoe or a pair of shoes that are, I guess, dipped in gold. There was one outlet that was saying that Trump could be exposed to lawsuits because of it. I mean, what's new there? But are you going to get a pair of the Trump sneakers, Don?
No, I've always followed the philosophy that I don't want to wear any shoes that someone might kill me for. So I don't know if anybody'd kill you for Trump shoes, but back in the day when you had the Air Jordans, and I said, you know what? Tennis shoes, I always bought the cheapest pair, and people would make fun of me. I said, I'm sorry, man. They feel fine to me, and I don't want to be walking around just like I wouldn't buy a Maserati or one of these cars where somebody could kill you to hijack it. I drive my little Toyota Prius. I don't think anybody's going to hijack me for it, and so I prefer to be safe. But yeah, I saw them. They're very gold. And does he actually claim he can't claim they're actually dipped in gold? Is that the claim? They're sprayed on. Is it edible gold? A lot of these high-end restaurants for the hoity-toits, they have edible gold now. Is it made in? I think I heard they were made in Mexico or China, which would I mean, all tennis shoes are made there, so I don't know why his wouldn't be, but he might have had a point if he made them in America and can advertise there. We opened up another factory in Detroit and bombed out Detroit, and we're going to make them there. And then maybe he could, I don't know what they would cost then, I guess. But I saw it, but it's the reaction is what you'd expect. Everybody that hates Trump is going apoplectic. Oh my God, I'll buy him and burn him in the street. That kind of, and everybody that loves him, they want to wear them and to go with their MAGA hats.
Well, I think in light of the shoes hitting the market, I think we should introduce the America Unplugged safety helmet for those who are buying the shoes. If you buy the shoes, you're probably a danger to yourself and others. We're going to give you the America Unplugged safety helmet for your own protection. I don't claim that I think it'll be too expensive for us to dip in gold, but maybe silver. Maybe we'll give you to protect you from vampires as well.
Werewolves, yeah. Well, yeah, it's true. You don't want to, because I knew lots of people in my neighborhood that were afraid to put a Trump sign up in the yard because they didn't want to vandalize. And almost everybody, you got to have real balls to wear a MAGA hat. And so, yeah, you wear those gold shoes if they're distinctive enough so people can tell what they are, or maybe if you just wear. Just like if you wear any red hat now, it could be dangerous because people just think it's a MAGA hat. Same thing. If you have a gold pair of shoes, might not be Trump shoes, but if people see it, might get triggered.
I don't know, Don. I mean, Jesse Smollett showed us that downtown Chicago at 1 a.m. is MAGA country. I don't know.
That's right.
That's right. I don't know if you got the memo.
You should be safe. Yeah, in Chicago in the middle of the night. Sure. Go ahead and wear your Trump shoes.
Well, starting with the Trump sneakers and other absurdities, you're writing a new article and putting some stuff out on Substack. Let's talk about this prosecutor in Georgia, this unraveling this dumpster fire. You want to
take a load off
Fanny?
Yeah, Fannie Willis. But I am. She inspired this, and it's ready to hit the presses. I got to proofread it again, but it's kind of a combination of two things. It was the Fannie Willis, just seeing her and just again, I don't know why it's like watching a train wreck or something. You know, there's a lurid fascination with it, but this woman is just I'm used to seeing maybe some black public officials mixing the plurals and singulars up and things that irritate me as a stickler for the English language. I think that someone in a position of public responsibility ought to be able to speak the language correctly. I think that's the least we could ask. But this woman gives Newman, and I said, people know my history. I was a blue collar worker, late 70s through the 80s, and I worked with hundreds and hundreds I was like the lone white many times in the whole floor that was on. And so I was immersed in black culture, for good and bad, lots of positives to it. I enjoyed working around them mostly. I mean, because, we all had a shared hostility for the man. So that was good. We all hated, nobody liked management. But, when I look at this, I'm saying I knew lots of housekeepers and laundry workers, women who were probably better spoken than Fannie Willis is. They were working then, we're making a pittance. I mean, if you had suggested that, hey, you should go to law school, I mean, they would have been like, what? What are you talking about? Go mop the floor, but that's where we are. This woman went to law school and supposedly, and I would like to have seen her exams again, because she drips stupidity or just ignorance, whatever you want to call it. And she has, if you watch the testimony, it's unbelievable. She has the whole ghetto persona. I mean, she's keeping it real. I mean, she's throwing papers around. She's calling the white woman that's questioning her. She called her a liar over and over again. And the ridiculous white cuck judge that is sitting there, McAfee, he's not John McAfee, who they murdered, but this is Scott McAfee, I think his name is. He's sitting there looking like he's scared of his own shadow. He's giving her free rein. Judges usually, they love to bang that gavel and say contempt of court. She should have been held in contempt of court over and over again. She was ridiculous. She was screaming everything about her. And this is a district attorney, not to mention making basic grammatical errors. And it was embarrassing to watch. And then we learned that the Judge McAfee, was a contributor to Fannie Willis's political campaign. And his wife contributed twice to her. So again, we're used to seeing this now, where, especially in cases involving Trump, where every judge basically should recuse himself because they all have some kind of connection to Trump's, opponents or something. And they never do. They never do. And it used to be you would recuse yourself over, something half as serious as that. But so it's fascinating to watch this. And at one point, she displayed the predictable racism, the anti-white racism, when she said, I am not going to emasculate a black man. So presumably she would be okay with emasculating a non-black man. But at any rate, it's fascinating to watch, but it's again, a litmus test, and we fail every one of these litmus tests, Tony, because it's been for decades. It's got nothing to do with, her necessarily being black, other than the fact she's getting away with this kind of stuff. It shouldn't matter. She's purple. She's acting completely ridiculous, and she should have been slapped down. As people in courtrooms have been held in contempt of court for just questioning, very reasonably questioning some irrational decision of the judge. In this case, she's just acting completely inappropriately, unprofessionally, and nothing has happened to her. And so it doesn't give me any confidence that this guy's going to do the right thing, which should be obviously you need to be gone from this case. Obviously you're completely prejudiced, and you had unethical. I mean, do you understand what she admitted to on the witness stand? She talked about, she took $8,500 of her from her last campaign and kept it.
And then she said, I keep as much as $15,000, $18,000 worth of cash around my house wherever I lay my head down. What? And she couldn't say where she got the cash from. Said something like, oh, from my own sweat and tears or something. It's like, what? She didn't know what a check was. At one time, the woman asked about a check, said, what's a check? I mean, this is a district attorney. It was almost surrealistic. It's almost like this is beyond comedy. You couldn't even write it. That this woman is the district attorney and she's prosecuting the former president of the United States, whatever you think of Trump. It's absolutely ludicrous. And she has gotten away with it so far. And apparently she's going to, I mean, and understand she gave the campaign and then she pays off this guy who she was sleeping with, hires him, and he gets some of this money or some of this cash that's laying around the house that she can't, I mean, you have huge amount. And I understand a lot of us want to keep cash. And I don't think she's like a prepper or something. He doesn't trust the banks. I think this is more in line with what you might see with drug dealers or old time mafia stuff. That's where you see these huge hordes of cash. So clearly it cries out for a real investigation, and she should probably investigate it and disbarred. But I don't think it, I look forward to seeing her being just as arrogant, confronting Trump on the stand. Of course, Trump will play his part too, because he'll fight back in his usual way, and it'll be WWE theater. But for anyone watching it, it was another really exclamation point for how far we have fallen. Because it's not like the white DAs were any less corrupt. It's just that at least they sounded like they were competent. It's like we see now with our leaders where they can't keep the power up. They can't plow the streets in a snowstorm, things like that. In the past, they were corrupt, but at least they were able to get those things done. At least if you're going to be district attorney, at least sound like you should have that authority. Of course, you're going to be corrupt because the system's corrupt. But so that's my point, is that not necessarily they're any more corrupt, and of course, because she's so ignorant, she doesn't even have the common sense to realize what she's admitting to on the stand. But because she's not subject to the same rules and regulations as everyone else, she's probably going to get away with it.
Did you see any evidence of a Soros connection to this particular district attorney? Because that seems to be a phenomenon all across the country strategically for George.
Yeah, well, that's the rumor. Again, and Soros's name is thrown around so much, and I think sometimes, I don't know if it's documented, but we just assume that he apparently has put so much money behind so many of these kind of prosecutors that the guy out in was it Garcetti and people like that in California and others around the country that are letting violent criminals go and eliminating bail for them while targeting politicized prosecutions of people like Trump and Rudy Giuliani, Alex Jones, and people like that on the right, regardless of what you think of them. So she fits the bill. She sure seems like it, but she got elected. So again, what does it say if she was legitimately elected? But again, it's part of what I'll be writing about with the ghettoization of America, because our ghettoized culture, because the people that are voting for her, they've been conditioned. Those black people have been conditioned to think, hey, this is what we want. We had a mayor, Marion Barry, in Washington, D.C., who was caught an undercover video. And he should have been, become the laughing stock of the world and should have never shown his face in public again, because, he's what I'm saying, the bitch set me up and all that. It looks so ridiculous. He looked just, again, like all the black people I was working with back then. And he was the mayor of a city. But that's why he was popular, because the black population is conditioned to think that's who we want in charge. We don't want Clarence Thomas or somebody like, Colin Powell, somebody that seems professional and can talk. We want somebody who keeps it real. And so that's what you get. And Fatty Willis, whether Soros is funding or not, is definitely keeping it real.
I was looking over at the chat. Jackson T. Barrett says Soros money is just laundered Rothschild money. Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me, Jackson.
Yeah. Well, I think that Soros is, and I defended Soros one time because Alex Jones and a lot of people talk about him being, he helped the Nazis when I think we figured out he was 12 or 13 or something. And, so I don't know how much he could have helped the Nazis at that point. So I think it's kind of, you got to have some common sense. Come on. At this point, and the same way I defended a lot of other young Germans back then in Nazi Germany, is that I would defend him as well. If this regime was half as evil as we're told it was, what were you supposed to do as a teenager? So I'm not going to do it and be killed or something. So I don't think it's fair to blame him for that, but certainly his funding of the most awful woke and anti-white projects is something that we should all,
Yeah, and that's pretty much it's indicative of the upper 1% of 1%. They always fund socialism and Marxism at the ground level. And I think that creates an environment for them to continue to consolidate wealth without competition. We could go into that, but I mean, really sticking with the politics of this too, Don, and you and I are Trump skeptics, agnostics, whatever. We're not caught up in the MAGA cult or anything. And I just look at it. I see that they're persecuting him. I see politically where this could lead, because there is a side of this fight that is playing 4D chess. I'm sorry, it's not the MAGA crowd, folks. I mean, because the more you persecute Trump, the more you make him a martyr, the more that you galvanize his base. His base makes it inevitable that he becomes the Republican nominee. Meanwhile, in the middle, if you're doing triangulations, if we're even, again, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? I'm saying, if this is not a selection, if there is still political science left in any of this, then there's a big swath of the middle that's never going to go for him. So there's a play here that they could be making. Not enough to mortally wound him, just enough to bog him down and just enough to solidify the base. And that seems to be the operation here. But I want to get from you, if you're looking at this, if you're looking at these prosecutions, at what degree, Don, are these people different than, because you've always had activists, whether left or right, and especially from the 1960s and onwards in the civil rights movement. I'll give you an example. We had a guy, and I don't know if he's still alive, but in Dallas when I was growing up, John Wiley Price. He was Dallas City Council. He's a very vocal Dallas City councilman, black gentleman, always out, always boycotting stuff or showing. But this is very much in the roots of like Jesse Jackson and some others. He was very, very vocal. But you could approach him, because my family had to do deals in downtown Dallas. We had properties there and convenience stores and real estate. And he was very much a deal maker. Like he was reasonable. Like he was a believer in he was an activist, but you could get deals done. You could work with him. Like you were mentioning the corruption of the politicians in the past, but they built great cities, like there was still something there where, they were corrupt, and there was Tammany Hall and all these other things, these machines.
Yeah.
You had the Pendergast machine in Missouri here, where I'm broadcasting from, that put Truman in office. And there was a lot of but they built roads, and they had, there was things that still happened. I'm wondering now if we've crossed some sort of Rubicon where now these people are just absolute partisans with there's no thought of the tomorrow, or no thought of building or anything. And so we're just kind of left with what we think we're dealing with, politics as usual. And I don't know that we are. I don't know that it's like they're almost untouchable in some way if it's even remotely away from their narrative. Like you can't even like enhance them with the donation. Can you buy these people anymore? Or are they just been bought by partisanship?
Yeah, no, I think you can. I quote that that saying from Jonathan Swift, who wrote Gulliver's Travels from the 1700s, who joked at that time. He was a humorist too, and he talked about the judges of his day being so corrupt you couldn't bribe them to do the right thing. And I think that that's where we are today. I think that you could look at most public officials, and I don't think you could bribe them to do the right thing. I think maybe because they're aware of the powers they're up against. So let's say you could, I don't know, Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz, one of these freedom call. If you said, okay, then I'll give you like $10 million if you tell the whole truth and stop holding back, and just come right out, and I don't. First of all, they already have enough, maybe, so they don't need that. But I think that, again, they're aware of, what would be the repercussions if I did that? I may get $10 million, but I'll no longer be in Congress, maybe get killed. So I think it's harder. And in terms of judges, I think they serve the unseen masters too. I mean, let's look at this guy McAfee. It looks like he donated to mostly Republicans. So why did he and his wife, what did they see in Fannie Willis? This, really ill-spoken, kind of, arrogant woman who's obviously, the poster child for affirmative action. She's not remotely qualified, What did they see in her that they said, I've got to donate. I'm going to cross parties because I'm usually a Republican. Why are they donating to her? And I think that we need to ask that question is, what are people seeing? We know what the Black community may see in her. They see one of them and they think they're in power when, of course, she's not going to do anything for them, because if she gets one of them in the court, if she's prosecuting, some Black drug dealer that says, I keep $18,000 in my house, you guarantee he's not getting away with it. The same thing she's doing. But they mistakenly think because they sound like them, and maybe they kind of act like them, that she's one of us. So that's what they did with Marion Barry. Marion Barry got reelected later after that DC mayor, because they wanted to stick it, because they hated the way the media was going. And so they didn't care. I mean, how many people in DC were convicted and sent to prison for crack? And they didn't care. The mayor was on videotape doing it and wasn't convicted. So that's what it's just amazing to me that this stuff goes on and people can't see through it. But it's kind of, I guess I kind of strayed from the question, but.
No, I think you're right. But this politics are completely different than they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. I mean, we're not even looking at the same playing field. Just that reference that you had about you can't bribe them to do the right thing. That's what I'm talking. It's not just about buying people anymore. You're talking about true believers that they're captured by the fulcrum of whatever mind control of partisanship. And it's so deep. In this same line of logic, Don, I want to talk a little bit about, and this just came to my mind because it's been rolling around. I can't quite process what this trucker boycott in New York was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know anything about this Chicago Ray guy gets on, he's wearing his Trump hat, and he's like, hey, we're not going to take any loads to New York. And I know all these guys are refusing the loads. They're not going to take the semis to New York to drop things off. I remember watching this video because it gets passed around. And unfortunately, this is in my news because I'm of the right. And so I see all this stuff, and then now it's cheering this guy. And I think, so, okay, just on the surface level, let's say he's right. So you're not going to deliver food and supplies to people in New York to punish them because of the judge there. Like that, I don't know how that's going to help. But second of all, it just sounds like I'm a stranger in a strange land, because I'm listening to this talk and this rhetoric, and it's saying, you quit messing with Trump. Quit doing this with Trump. But and there's so much to unpack here because, again, Trump's the guy that locked you down. He put Anthony Fauci in charge of the country. He said you weren't essential. He smashed the supply chain. I mean, 40% of all the dollars ever created were created in his administration. I'm talking about the history of the U.S. So we got some things to unpack there, but it never happened. So, thankfully, I don't think that's the right way to go about any of this. I do respect what the Canadian truckers did. I think that was a completely different thing, but because it wasn't based on a person. It was based on the persecution of all Canadians, and about mandates and about government policy. And it wasn't about, so did you dig into this at all? It just screamed to me that something was wrong with it.
Yeah. Well, and my son was talking yesterday. He was watching, I guess Alex Jones had a show where he was claiming, it's really, this is really going to have an impact. But Alex Jones is famous for doing that, saying something really big and nothing ever happens. He makes way too many predictions. That's one of, I think, his biggest flaws, where he's constantly saying something's going to happen that never does. And so you just kind of tune him out. But the Chicago guy that was leading that, I thought he backed off originally and said he wasn't going to lead it. But then my son was saying they had a pretty big protest, which I think you're right that it's kind of, I think, an error in judgment, or whatever you want to call it, or maybe it was planned that way to do, because I don't know how you're going to get the support of the public if they can't get food or whatever. It can make it very easy to demonize the truckers, much as, for instance, when the left blocks traffic over any issue at all, when they're laying down and you can't get where you need to go, most people don't care why you're protesting. It doesn't matter. It's like, look, out of my way, I need to get somewhere. You're causing me inconvenience. So this is maybe even on a grander scale, because if you have food shortages, and you can bet if these people are legitimate protesters, that the establishment will have given a gigantic weapon to be able to demonize them with. See, they're keeping food. You want to blame the truckers? Look at them. And you're right. The difference in Canada, they really couldn't do that there because Canadians were protesting the lockdowns and the mandates and all that. You're right. And that's the problem where what little protest we have against the woke left is just centered around Trump, the personality. And that's the problem. That's why it goes nowhere, because especially for those of us that, don't buy Trump, the personality. In my case, I think he's Trumpenstein. I can, defend, not defend him, but say it's unfair what's going on in the courts. They're all ridiculous, but not because I like Trump. And I don't even think I think he's part of the script. I think he's playing his part here. I think he's as much an actor as Fannie Willis is. But regardless, either way, it's wrong. But I can look at it. But that doesn't mean I support Trump. I saw what Trump did for 4 years in the White House. I know how he still builds everything around himself. So and the fact that the Chicago Ray or whatever his name is saying they're not being fair to Trump. So I mean, you're gonna withhold proof. I mean, all the other stuff that's happened in this country, and the fact that our civil liberties have been destroyed. People have lost their jobs over social media posts and things like that, and not to mention the systemic corruption everywhere. You're worried about Trump. They're unfair to him. The personality, and I think that's very misguided, and it wouldn't be what I'd choose, what hill I'd choose to fight on.
No, it just seems like there's so much connection there with the trucking industry and American values, like, because you're talking about small business, which is really the backbone of America. A lot of these entrepreneurs and the on-time delivery of supplies. There's just so much that our country depends on truckers, and it seems like if you want the 15-minute city reality, if you want the Great Reset, you got to go after some of these institutions. And what a better way to do that than to pit the truckers against people, like the actual people that are going to suffer for any of these type of boycotts. I just got a text from Billy. He's like, the trucker thing was never going to happen. No, yeah, I don't think it was either. But it's like these test balloons that they throw, and I agree that this decision in New York, just absolute garbage. When you talk about any kind of semblance of being safe to invest or to borrow money or anything, there's lots of real estate investors. I think Grant Cardone and others, there were a bunch say, hey, we're not going to underwrite anything else in New York City, because of this ruling, because it does set a precedence for others that, when you're going in for a loan, this is kind of the thing you do. You could try to amass as much, on paper equity as I can. This is how much I can pay back. Everybody does. It's just a common, if you can show it, right. And a lot of times equity and wealth is subjective. It's going to change by the market conditions. It changes by the appraisal. And again, I'm not even sticking up for Trump. I'm just saying for all of us to live in a world where there's any kind of justice at all. And you've written about this for years, but the injustice system, I can personally tell you when somebody says, I'm going to sue so-and-so. I'm like, you realize how hard that is? I mean, I mean, just to even if the truth is on your side, even if you've got a great case, it's so hard to move anything real through the justice system. It's very much rigged, and these judges are partisan. They come from the same kind of class of people for the most part. It's very hard and you see that smirky judge. It's $386 million fine, and it gains like interest every single day. For what? And could you get anybody off the street to explain what that fine is for? Meanwhile, the powers that be and the central banksters, when they've stolen our wealth via inflation, just complete theft, but it's murder. When you're talking about the choices that people on fixed income have had to make over the past 5 years, whether they're going to get meals or medicine, because they lost the purchasing power, and everybody's standing around, well, things went up in cost. So there's criminality at the top, and all this stuff is a sideshow. And meanwhile, they're killing any semblance of the free market. Well, I don't even know why I use those terms anymore. I don't know what I use the free market for. But you know what I mean? It's like to have to do business and so who in their right mind is going to be going to New York City to do so? That's the travesty of it. And I don't think the trucker thing is a sideshow. And I think there's going to be more of that, by the way. And it's like they just try to do this at the border. Is anybody?
Well, but White Wolf was mentioning in the chat as well. What happened to that trucker thing? Last I heard, they were told to go to the wrong place or something. I mean, we were told they're going to have 15,000 or some ridiculous amount of trucks. I don't even know how many trucks in the country, but that were going to go there. And I thought, well, if anything remotely like that happens, that would be incredible. But again, these stories, that's why I talk about all the time. They're forgotten. They go down the memory hole. What happened to him? That was what happened to Abbott. It looked like Texas was ready for secession. I mean, he was sounding like Jefferson Davis, and oh man, this is what happened. I mean, nothing. I mean, it goes on to the next story. And so that's why people, I think, have trouble believing anything's real. But going to Trump as far as, again, it doesn't just look at the face of this. It doesn't matter if this is who this is. And Trump, again, is a figurehead here. He's a symbolic representation of possible dissent. He's being prosecuted so that they can set the precedent for maybe prosecuting some of us in the future. And this is one way they can do it in terms of financial, doing things that everyone does. Trump, the guest said there was no crime here because whatever Trump said about his assets or anything like that, he paid back his loan, and the people he got loaned from testified for him. I mean, people need to understand that. What was the crime? Other than the mechanism of the court wanted to prosecute him. You had no witnesses saying he did anything wrong, except for people saying Trump's a criminal. Trump's a criminal. This is the nonsense they always say, and they hate his personality, which is what Trumpenstein Project was designed for. But you can't. How do you prosecute somebody for, even if he wildly inflated the value? As you said, everybody does that, and it doesn't matter because he paid the loan back on time, and the people who were his debtors, they believed that said we testified for him. He did nothing wrong here. So how do you and then you fine him $360 million for what? I mean, but it's possible now because they're using Trump, because they built this impossible personality up. They're setting precedents for doing it. Here they set a precedent for trying any of us for any kind of finance. They could come up with your gold and silver thing. They could come up with certainly something, as tangible as what they did with Trump, where if they don't have to have anybody complaining that they were defrauded and you actually paid the loan, whatever, and still prosecute you and then ruin your business, in case Trump won't be ruined because he's not going to pay anything anyhow. But even if he was, he has more than that. In your case, or people, at that level, they can ruin you doing this if they think you're a real dissenter. And then you had the E. Jean Carroll case where he, again, was fined millions over a woman who's clearly unbalanced. It belongs in one of the mental institutions that Reagan shut down back in the 80s. It just paints her trees blue and has a cat named Vagina and a dog named Tits. Talks constantly about how rape is a fantasy. Some women enjoy it. Joked about it for years after Donald Trump supposedly raped her. Joked about Donald Trump and sex on social media, and couldn't even remember the year the incident happened. And he was found guilty. I mean, that should frighten every male in America, because they can take any woman 30. They can find some woman that said she knew me 30 years ago, and he raped me. I don't remember the year exactly, but that's what am I supposed to do? That's the problem. This sets a horrible precedent. People don't understand that, and it's the same basic thing in terms of what we're seeing with Fani Willis, where they're talking about him. What is the wording of it? They tried the way they're phrasing it, that he conspired to overturn an election. Well, if you believe that an election was fraudulent, that's what you are trying to do. You're trying to overturn the results of a fraudulent election. So, but the terminology here is that wanting to overturn an election, any election, is a crime. And so all these things they're doing to him, again, and it's not because he's this poor, pathetic guy and they're so frightened of him becoming president again. That's what the right thinks. But they're doing it symbolically, and why they're doing it, we need to argue against it. But the problem is the people that hate Trump are cheering this on because they know he's guilty. They know he's a criminal, and they can't produce anything that he did criminally. I mean, he's got maybe a criminally obnoxious personality, but beyond that, what has he done as a crime? I mean, that you can prove, and they continue to do this, and they're using. He's a perfect whipping boy. This is a Trumpenstein project. It should worry every one of us because they're setting whatever was left of the legal system is being shattered by this.
Well, I agree with you, and it's the grift that keeps on giving. And if you look at the overall picture here, I mean, even starting with going back to the trucker deal and starting with that, how much these little crises and every time there's a persecution, every time there's a ruling, every time there's all that, and it just, again, it's a money machine. You go back to stop the steal and all the time leading up to January 6th, $250 million. The first $8,000 you gave to the RNC went to Trump. It didn't go to a legal team. There was no legal team. It was, Sidney Powell releasing the Kraken and Rudy Giuliani's hair dye falling into his eyes.
Yes.
There wasn't anything real about that. Now you
and Sidney Powell was under threat. What was she under threat of prosecution? She didn't do anything. That was the whole joke. All she did was talk about stuff. What can she be prosecuted for? She was just basically publicly saying there was fraud. So that's a crime now. Rudy Giuliani is have to pay what was it, $100 and some million to two campaign workers? What? Because he said, I mean, but again, people who have Trump derangement syndrome, which is a real thing, a very real disease, a clinical disease. They should put it in all the medical textbooks because it's definitely real. They are willing to believe. They don't care. They don't care about the law. They don't care about logic. They know they hate Trump and they basically want him hanged in the public square is what they want. But lacking that, they want him in an orange jumpsuit and they want to picture him getting raped by Bubba in prison and all the fantasies they have. That's what they want. And they won't be satisfied until that happens. It doesn't matter that as much as you hate the guy, the sad fact is he didn't do anything but tweet. Unless you're going to, try to prosecute him for stupid tweets, which shouldn't be a crime either. I don't know but I know I'm I'm in my own group here, the Trump agnostics, and we're the smallest minority group in the world.
It's infuriating to me because, there's so much marketing and people we could reach if only we weren't skeptical and have real analysis and leaving so much money on the table. But I have to because, that's my conscience and try to be as real as possible. Whenever I'm speaking to anyone, I'm going to give them my best analysis. And unfortunately, it's not me wearing a MAGA hat. Let's put it that way. Let's transition into the final story of the show here. In light of everything that's going, we have a country with no border on purpose. We have a country that's stepping through tripwires all over the world to set off possible kinetic warfare in wars that have no interest to the United States or the security of the United States, just suicidal. Basically, our foreign policy is a suicide pact. And we have this $1 trillion foreign policy, $1 trillion, defense budget. But at the same time, we keep having balloons fly over the United States with impunity. Which I guess if you're in the clown show, there's going to be balloons. But I see this newest report on this was out last day. Another spy balloon. U.S. military monitors high altitude moving object after fighter aircraft dispatch. They dispatched them out of NORAD. This is coming from NSM. So what's your take on this? This is a phenomenon that continues to happen.
I said at the time, the Chinese spy balloon. I just seemed to, again, I'm not part of any intelligence agency, but it seems to me like that's a pretty, what do you call it, conspicuous way of trying to spy on people. We have a slow moving balloon that you can pretty much tell, especially after the first time. I mean, apparently it took us a while the first time because I don't know how many states it went over before it was even reported. So I guess they thought it was a UFO or something, but I don't get them doing this way. And again, I look at all this again. I think it's mass distraction. I don't think there is such a thing as a spy balloon. I'd like to have that explained to me. What's on the spy balloon? What are they doing? And what can they do here beyond what? Let's say if it's from China. China has made tremendous inroads on the United States. Why would they need to send what are they looking at with the spy balloon?
I'm with you on this, Don. Most of the time, if you study history and you study warfare in the past 100 years, what you come across the term false flag, and that's really embedded in every one of our conflicts.
Yeah.
So you should have a reaction. Your first reaction to anything is like, oh, is this real? Mm-hmm. Is this an outside threat? Because either it's allowed to happen or it's just completely made up. And I was just thinking while you were speaking about this, so you have this in this time frame of the balloon overlaps with the entire AT&T and other cell phone provider outages that happened at the same time. And then you saw the response from the FBI and others saying, don't forget about China. Don't forget about China, which is interesting because they've pivoted from Russia that was their go-to, and they've kind of pivoted away from that, which is really a departure that's should be a little bit of alarming to us, especially if you in light of what about U.S.-China relations going back to Nixon and Kissinger, and the sharing of intelligence, and going back to 1979 with Zbigniew Brzezinski and Jimmy Carter ceding. There's a document from January 1st, 1979 that just says Taiwan they're committing it to a one China policy. We start reversing those things now, which is really strange. Are we being primed, Donald Jeffries? We're being primed to see that our infrastructure is under attack, or that we're being spied upon. What is this?
Well, I wish China would attack our infrastructure. Maybe they would be forced to rebuild it, because we haven't touched it in 60 years. So maybe it'd be a good idea. But no, I think China, again, the idea, we know the inroads. China has so much influence in Hollywood, for instance, in our media. They have influence in huge corporations in the sports world, the NBA, for instance. South Park did a whole spoof of that episode where they were, LeBron James and all the players were scared to say anything negative about China. I don't know what kind of an enemy they can, unlike Russia, who they thoroughly demonize and try to, claim there's Russian disinformation everywhere. They have incestuous ties with China all over the place. And China is the society they emulate. They would like to build the new America 3.0 or whatever. They would like to build it on the template set by China. This whole agenda on climate change is based around the new normal and lowered expectations. It's not about saving the environment. Otherwise, they might say something about China and India, which are the two biggest polluters on the planet. They never mention them, because this isn't about climate change. Isn't actually about the climate. It's about the people, lowered expectations, and they would love to have what China has now with its people, where they pay them almost nothing. They have a long day. Way longer than 8 hours, and they go back to their little bunk bed-sized cubicles. This is what they want for us. That's why you see these millennials, because they've priced housing out of the reach of all of them. So now they're buying little, tool shed type houses, tiny houses, and they're giving them cute names. In San Francisco, they have these chic, really tiny, I guess you call them apartments. They're like closets, and they're charging an arm and a leg for them. So they're getting, especially once they get like the yuppies in San Francisco to buy it, people will eventually start thinking, well, that's the cool thing to do. It's responsible. Minimalist living. They have a whole minimalist living. They have all these young people. They kind of have the hippie mentality that, they've gone from communes to minimalist living. So all this is really based on the China template, the example of China. And so I don't know, when they talk about a spy balloon, what would China be spying on with a balloon? First of all, what can you see from a balloon? I don't understand what they're looking to see. And they're not, the balloon isn't showing up over the Pentagon or something. I mean, so what exactly are they? Are they looking at cornfields, or I don't even know where it was at, but what exactly are the Chinese? And nobody asked these questions. Oh, it's a Chinese spy balloon. What do you mean by that? First of all, why would you use a slow-moving China? This is not. I can see maybe using drone technology, maybe, but what do you do using a Chinese spy balloon? This is really kind of ancient technology, and what are you spying? But nobody asked that question. They just say the right says, yeah, we got to stop the Chinese from spying on us, and usually what that means is more restrictions. We need to watch. Well, we need to we need to cut back, we need to sacrifice, and we need to cut back a little bit on your liberties, because, what if we get another one of them Chinese spy balloons up in the air? What are we going to do then? So nobody questions, what are you talking about? Explain the Chinese spy balloon. What is it? And has China denied that it was a spy balloon? I don't know. And can we see the spy balloon? Does it have Chinese writing on it? What's on it? Is there a little a camcorder or something? What is on the Chinese spy balloon? Does it have any? Yeah, does it have any weapons? I mean, I don't get it. So when they say, but this again, Americans have been conditioned to accept nonsensical explanations. And this is just, more, if you hear it's another distraction too, because as White Wolf mentioned in the chat, the Texas border, which I was all hopped up about that 2 or 3 weeks ago, because I thought, hey, maybe Abbott finally, decided to get some resolve, because he sure sounded like Jefferson Davis and all these other people. Was it like 20 some states signed on with it? Or something like that. So, and even Republican governors like the Rhino in Utah. So it's like, what is going on here? So what did that all mean? Because, and then who was it telling me? My friend Bob Carnes, who might be listening to the show, and he listens to some of these broadcasts. I forget the guy's name. Some of you all out there might know, but he claims there's a bunch of, not bunch, but there are podcasters out there that have gone and traveled along the border and claimed they don't see anybody coming across the border. Now, I mean, is this all a psyop? I have no idea what's going on, but and that's the problem, is because this is such a stupid. And then I don't know if you saw that thing with the Texas Republican that went out there herself, a former Army vet, and put barbed wire fence up along a 10-foot opening or something so that people couldn't do it. And they had Fox News breathlessly reported it. It's just, I don't know. The whole thing is so stupid. And where are the troops in the 150 countries? Bring them, station along there. Where's the deportation proceedings? But none of that's happening. And it's not going to happen under Trump, because Trump is just going to bluster and talk. That's what he did when he was in the White House before.
Well, we're definitely on a collision course, Don, with what all the consequences of the way this country's been run. Our civilization itself is on the line, and it seems that politics is dead on arrival. It can't be reached at this time, and I feel like there's no outlet anywhere. So it's hard to even speculate on elections. I used to think about that stuff all the time. Political strategy, who's up, who's down. I saw the headlines on Drudge today and it's Drudge, guys. I understand what Drudge is, but I'm looking at Drudge because it's kind of like, what does Operation Mockingbird want me to think about right now? And that's kind of why I go to it. But the headline is about Trump prosecuting Nikki Haley. Like, this is where, like, literally you have you're right. It's an open question on the board. We know, I mean, you can see the border is not a psyop, because, I mean, in my opinion, because you can see the evidence.
Yeah, I would. That's why I was shocked when he said that. I said, I'd like to talk to these people. What. Yeah.
But you can see the evidence, that's in real time, especially in places when you live in Texas and seen the change there, and seen the change in the country, and seen, we have a demographic shift.
Yes.
And that's part of the process, whether it's a great replacement or whatever you want to call it. It's just, again, it's a weapons of mass immigration, and they're weaponizing people. Unfortunately, there's a lot of poor people. They're just weaponizing them, and they're coming from places that we discussed many times that had coup d'etats and disruptions from the United States government and Western intelligence. So, Don, as we close out, this is typical America Unplugged fashion. We covered a lot of different stories, and did you have anything else that you wanted to go over before we close?
No, I wonder what is Trump. I mean, again, nobody is more repulsed by Nikki Haley than I am, but what exactly would Trump prosecute Nikki Haley for? Challenging him? I mean, that's as dumb as his prosecutions.
Well, and it kind of goes back to whatever, the 2016 election is like, yeah, you'd be in jail, and then, you fast forward after inauguration, she's really good people, like this is.
Yeah, she's my UN ambassador. Yeah. Yes.
And these institutions, folks, I mean, even if you are the president anymore, like, unless you fire everyone, or, unless you have some, like, you have the biggest temp agency in the history of the world fill in for all these people that run the government. It's the continuity of government. The cog is very much Marxist, statist, globalist, whatever you want to call them, right there in DC. I don't think you can remove that. So I don't think anybody's going to do any damage to any political opponent of Trump or whatever if he's reelected. By the way, I think that looks more. I think it does look more likely that we're looking at because if you rewind the tape a bit, go back to 2021, and we'll close. I'll get your thoughts on this, Don, I know you don't like to make predictions, and I really don't either. But if you're putting your finger in the wind and testing the climate right now, it seems that the trajectory of Trump going into November looks pretty strong at this point. It's actually kind of surprising for me that we made it through the gauntlet. The Republican primary looks like it's sewn up for the most part. I mean, maybe a little resistance here and there, but it looks like inevitable. Given that, with them keeping Biden, it's late in the game. They'd have to make a massive sea change now. I don't know that that's going to happen. I think they'll just ride this to the bottom. But the ruling class and the controllers of the narrative and the controllers of this country, unfortunately, don't have this country's best interest at heart. I think we all know that's why we're here talking about it. But it would, I think, usher in a great opportunity for them if he's elected. And because you look at the resistance only comes when people are like, oh, I don't have Trump in the White House is a great neutralizer. It happened in 2020 for sure, but it happened all through those, we're just playing 4D chess. It's a great opportunity for them to roll out more controls. And that's the way I see it. I see that as a clear and present danger. Any thoughts on that, Don?
Well, I have no idea, what they're planning to do, because I didn't, the last two elections, I would have never predicted Trump and then Biden. But I think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's really flying under the radar at this point. And he does still interview, like, again, my son turned me on to this. He finds a lot of good stuff. Really, if you get a chance to check it out, go on YouTube and you can see he was interviewed by Howie Mandel and his daughter, of all people. But RFK Jr., except for Israel, I can't figure that out other than somebody had a gun to his head. But at this point, I know it's going to offend a lot of people out there, Israel is not my main issue. Okay. I mean, I think it's ridiculous, but there's so many problems in this country. RFK Jr., he sounded so impressive in that interview. You got to watch it. He sounded so much more educated on the issues. And he knows all. He talked about all the vaccines, and he talked about the health crisis, the chronic health disease in Americans and American children. Things that he talked about, things like, I remember when I was a kid, there was no such thing as a peanut allergy. But by the time my kids came along, every table in the cafeteria had a big peanut on it. Can't eat peanuts here. It's deadly. And that's the kind of stuff he talks about that nobody else is talking about. He talked about big pharma, and he talks about the World Economic Forum and all this. And he is still polling. He claims he's still polling in the 20%. So by any of their rules, he has to be included in any debates. So I don't see any debates happening because I can't see Trump and Biden attempting to debate him. Even with his vote, and his vocal problems are getting better. I think he might have had another surgery or something. His voice sounded even stronger now. They can't possibly debate this guy. It's impossible. I mean, Trump would just call names and be ridiculous, and Biden wouldn't even know where he was at. I mean, I think even for the dumbed down American public, maybe a light would go off. So I don't know. I think RFK Jr. is the wild card here. I don't know why he's even still there. He's not before he was ridiculed more. Now they're kind of ignoring him. And he's not as high profile as what he was. So I think that, because assuming that any of the votes are legitimately counted, RFK Jr., I think, would take more votes from Trump, I would imagine. I don't know. Even though he was a Democrat, I don't see him taking any more votes from Biden, but I don't know. So I think that would maybe hurt Trump. But again, I have no idea. It is interesting. I'll give them that. And having Kennedy in there makes it more interesting. But I would urge everybody to watch that interview. And if you do, I think you'll see that why I still remain attracted to him, because he's just impressive. Maybe it's all fake, but unlike the other candidates, he is really well read. He knows he can throw the numbers out there. He has a grasp of history, which all the Kennedys do. And or most of them, and so at any rate, I think I would look at. And of course, I know it would be like it would be the biggest fantasy in the world. It would be like me winning a write-in election for Congress for RFK Jr. to win the presidency. And of course, if he did, all of us, including me, would automatically say, well, okay, I guess they got him too. He's that's how jaded we are. If our guy wins, we have to assume, well, he would, otherwise he wouldn't have been allowed to win. So at times I don't even know why I discuss politics, because that's how cynical we've become, and there's with good reason.
Absolute good reason. I mean, you just reverse engineer the last 5 years, and it's enough to say, I'm out. I don't want to even pay attention. It doesn't make any sense. And then again, you upset people. It's just, we might as well just talk about UFOs, but we have to. It's what we do. We study the news. We study the headlines because of Sun Tzu's maximum, know your enemy, ladies and gents. Don, you want to shout out anybody in your YouTube chat or?
Oh yeah, we got a lot of the usual people: White Wolf, Karen Carpenter, Sam's Bodie's Tree, JT, Jackson T. Barrett, Kian Ananta, Now What, Harlan Stonewall. I think I saw a couple others I hadn't seen before. My friend from across the pond, O.R. Busy. He'll message me and tell me what time it is in England a lot of times. Good to see you, O.R. I don't know what time it is now, but I don't think it's a great hour, so glad you're here. Gam Wolferts. I don't recognize that name. I think there was one or two others that I had not heard of before, or I didn't recognize. Oh, our friend Harps. We know him. And Jody Taylor.
We've had a lot of activity over on Rockfin too.
Denise Woolsey, yeah, okay. Yes, and Deborah Wheeler too was there, yeah.
I want to thank everybody on Rockfin too. Tom Cooper, Freethinker 59 is over there. Birdhouse Blues. I say Birdhouse Blues. They said America Unplugged always starts fashionably late, but better late than never. We're sorry about that. I'm working. Maybe we'll just make a pact between myself and Billy and Don to be more present. Maybe 10 minutes early instead of 3 minutes early. We usually just get in the back office and say, okay, headlines 1, 2, 3, let's go. Tom Cooper, Wayne McCroy, Rhonda Tate, so many, Patrick S over in the America Unplugged chat. I appreciate that. I want to say too, I'll go back to our chat over here on YouTube that I'm seeing on the screen. And I want to say was it Harlan Stowell? It says, the grift that keeps on giving, that should be a t-shirt, Tony. Well, thank you. Somebody got my joke. It's the grift that keeps on giving. I've used it a few times, didn't get any laughs, but thank you for noticing, Harlan. We'll have Billy back next week, folks. So be sure and download the podcast. Go and subscribe to America Unplugged on anywhere podcasts are found. Please do that. Leave us a review. It helps the algorithms. I mean, this is like us three putting our shows up on an RSS feed. We got to fight all sorts of persecution and shadow banning and outright banning. And so please give us a review if you like the show. I know Don's work. I've got some stuff I'm going to be loading up for Don here later in the weekend. So you can always find all of Don Jeffries' work on the America Unplugged channel. This show is sponsored by my company, which is Wise Wolf Gold and Silver and Wolfpack.gold. Wolfpack.gold memberships for precious metals. If you know anything about fiat currencies, where the average lifespan of a fiat currency is 26 years. The dollar is the oldest living fiat currency in the world. All fiat currencies go to zero. So you should think about housing some value when you got some of those Luciferian bankster notes. Turn them into actual real money. Go to wolfpack.gold, and there's 1776 is the promo code for free silver. So it's one way to support the show. And I'll be giving, Don's going to get a link soon. You can support Don Jeffries through Wolfpack. As soon as I get 5 minutes, I'll get Don's new link. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. Don, did you have you want to talk about your Substack? And
and also Chris Early that showed and said he was on Facebook over there. So glad. I don't know. I guess nobody else was. But Masking the Truth continues. They just continue to ratchet up the shadow ban. I've talked about Barnes & Noble disappeared the book completely. It's not there anymore. They won't give us an explanation. They won't even answer us. And now Amazon has just disappeared the Kindle version. So I guess you can't get an ebook anymore. And again, there's no explanation. The paperback's still up there. They've already blocked lots of reviews from going there. Libraries have been difficult. So anything you can do to help out Asking the Truth, get the word out there, and try, if you have, try to hit up these bigger platforms, Stu Peters and people like that should be interested in this book. This should be the book they were waiting for, but they're not. They're just ignoring it, and maybe because they don't think I'm big enough or whatever. But so anything you can do to help is fine. And Substack is the only place I'm not being shadow banned, the only place I'm being allowed to grow my audience, and that is donaldjeffries.substack.com. There's Tony's got it exactly, and it's just called I Protest, just like my weekly live streaming show here on these same fine platforms. donaldjeffries.substack.com. Please help me there, subscribe there, and I'm just about to put a new. Sure to be controversial, a new thought crime out there for you about Fannie Willis and George Floyd and everything else. Everything I write is a thought crime. So thought criminals in the world unite, because everybody listening to this is a thought criminal. So we have to stick together.
Well, thank you, Don. Thanks for being here. And shout out to Billy Ray. I enjoy your Trump shoes. Okay. I want to see pics. We got to get those out. But wear them next week to the show. We're going to want to see your new kicks, Billy Ray. I'm going to see if I can play us out, Don, and put everything together here to close out the show. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here. Don't burn the place down while we're gone. Okay. Talk to you soon.